here I am. I'm very happy to be talking with a colleague, Sylvester Johnson, about his work in the humanities and technology. Sylvester and I have gotten to know one another in the last couple of years. He is a professor of Black Studies at Northwestern University, and he is the current Kluge Chair at the Library of Congress for Science and Technology, and he has graciously offered us some time to talk about his work. Um, so that before he was at the Kluge Center, Sylvester directed the Center for the Humanities at Virginia Tech, and he co-founded the Institute for Leadership in Technology, in which I've had the wonderful pleasure of participating. He is the author of two major works. One is The Myth of Ham in 19th Century American Christianity. And the second is entitled, I'm going to make sure I get the title right, African American Religions 1500 to 2000, Colonialism, Democracy, and Freedom. That was published in 2015. So with that said, I'm very glad, Sylvester, that you're here with me and with my audience today, and we can have a little chat.
Thanks so much for inviting me, Tim. I'm delighted to be able to join you in the conversation.
Great, great. So I guess a broad questions. These are all broad questions, but could you tell us a little bit about how you integrate your interests in religion and technologies? You're so well versed in both fields. And maybe if you want, you can tell us a little bit about how you became interested in this relationship between religion and technology and how it evolved.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, that interest really emerged for me about 12, 13 years ago when I was a professor in African American Studies at Northwestern. I
Hmm.
was doing work examining some early histories of colonialism, race, and religion, looking particularly at 17th century texts that had not been printed since then, and decided to work with a team of others to create a digital edition
Wow.
of this and scan it and ingest it. And we ended up having to create a customized algorithm to do some text correction. And that project just became an AI project. And it actually made me pay attention to the way that technology, AI particularly, and technology more broadly, was shaping our world. I've
Hmm.
been trained in the study of race and religion and issues of structural systems of power with a lot of attention to focus on social justice and equity, and
Hmm.
had begun to realize that the people institutions that were designing and controlling technology were actually going to have a lot of influence on systems of power. And it it became pretty clear to me that people who were in these humanistic disciplines, at least some of us, it's not everybody, but at least some of us needed to at least be interested in how these systems were
Well,
going to
well
shape
done.
our world
Absolutely. Yeah.
and what the ethical concerns are going to be, and any attempt to try to produce more equitable outcomes for our society. It was clear enough even then we're going to have to be engaged with the
Hmm.
role of technology. And so
Hmm.
for me, that was the beginning of understanding that these technology systems could not be reduced to technical things, or were not the preserve of only technical experts, but they were
Hmm.
human issues, that there were societal issues, and that there needs to be engagement with it. So that's when it started, and then it just kind of moved from there, learning to understand more deeply the role that systems such as AI and genetic studies, genetic engineering, or genomics was playing, uh, financial technologies, how all of these innovations were
Hmm.
becoming much more powerful actors and forces, and the people and institutions behind them need to be part of how I was trying to understand the world. So that's when it started.
Yes, well, that gives us a lot of food for thought, and it leads to another question that has been on my mind to talk with you about, and it's one of these big questions. But I know, I mean, you're giving us some very sort of fundamental things to think about in a big way, in a deep way. So the question that I think that's occurring to me and that I think you're also addressing is, to what degree can technology become a means or obstacle to making our society more inclusive and democratic? So where have you seen sort of that relationship um, in your work, in your research, in your conversations with others?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Tim, because it raises a fundamental consideration of how we should understand technology,
Hmm.
particularly in light of its impact on society. So, most of what makes the news about technology is, with good reason, looking at the problems that
Hmm.
it creates, and its function, as what you asked me about, is it's helping our society to be more inclusive or democratic, is more of an obstacle. A lot of what we read about in the papers every day are those obstacles,
Right.
because it produces these, it's it activates existing conditions, and it can easily exacerbate those conditions. You think about the wealth divide,
Yep.
for
Yep.
example. The World Economic Forum just released a report recently examining or anticipating some of the many ways that that AI and other related areas of tech innovation are going to create more wealth and more value. And it sounds, the scale they're using is tens of trillions of dollars of new wealth. I mean, these are such astronomical figures that most people, including myself, don't have an operational understanding of what
Right.
$1 trillion. What would I buy with $1 trillion? Well, maybe one third of Apple, one third of Nvidia. But aside from that, what would I buy? I'm not really sure. It's just so much money. But the point is that it's exacerbating a lot of inequalities. Most of us are familiar with the observations about social media, for example, that have
Hmm.
functioned to further exacerbate existing political divisions.
Right.
It's created lots of effects. The way algorithms can be designed to feed people more of what they're already looking for, and
Mhm.
reinforce existing ideas and lessen the chance that they'll encounter other ideas that might help them to be more thoughtful people. And of course, we're seeing today the first war in the Middle East that is the most extensive use of AI
Mhm.
for targeting civilians,
Mhm.
is raising really important questions about the role of weaponizing AI and its implications
Mhm.
for human rights. So these are all just examples of ways that technology has functioned to be anti-democratic and to create less inclusion. Things like algorithmic bias
Right.
have been understood for many years now. These
Right.
AI systems are trained on data from the past, and so they can end up reinforcing
Forcing.
that past,
Yes.
right? And at the
Mhm.
same time, I think it's really important to bring some nuance to our understanding of the technology, because I like to point out that technology companies did not invent racism.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
been around, but it predates
Mhm.
them.
Mhm. Mhm.
They did not invent inequality. These are systemic issues that existed before these more recent forms of technology came along. These are ultimately problems of human institutions and human power and human politics. And so I think it's wrong to suggest that there's a kind of privileged or special relationships that technology has to systems of injustice or to societal problems. They're tools.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it's easy to identify, or I think it should be easy to identify ways we benefited from those I would never want to be in a hospital that
Mm-hmm.
did not have the best technology.
Right.
I think people actually need more access to technology.
Mm-hmm.
One of the ways I've benefited from engaging with people who are incarcerated is just to be reminded, for example, that when you are structurally deprived from access to things, when you have a room full of computers and iPads and smartwatches, it's easy to think about technology as this problem we have to get rid of. But when you are denied access to it, it becomes
Mm-hmm.
quite evident that
Mm-hmm.
people actually need good access to good technology. They need to be able to access connectivity for education,
Mm-hmm.
for financial reasons of inclusion, economic
Right.
inclusion. And and so in many ways, the internet and digital technologies have created better outcomes for healthcare access, better diagnosis, and delivery, accelerating the ability to conduct research that's led to drug discovery or
Right.
treatment for illnesses and disease. And that's only going to increase in the future. I guess I find myself being more mindful of the need to just bring more nuance because it might be easy in our political moment to almost vilify technology, and
Mm-hmm.
because we're so familiar with its problems, and we were not, I think we were too gullible 20 years ago and thinking the internet's gonna save us.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna democratize the world. Information is gonna be the super
Mm-hmm.
highway. Everybody gets on, and it's gonna be free information. We'll all be better for it. And what we realize is that actually it matters a lot who controls the
Who
technology. It
controls
matters
it?
a lot who
Yeah.
designs it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's both of those things. It's
Yeah.
been an obstacle in some ways, but it's also been an important means of bringing better outcomes in other ways.
Yeah. And one of the things that um that I'm taking from your comment too is that it is a tool, and the more people we can get to use the tool,
Mhm.
the more inclusive it will be. It's the more the greater range of people, the more diverse people, the greater access people have to using the tool is going to create an outcome that's more inclusive because and more democratic because it is a tool.
Mhm.
It's a tool. It's not a solution as much as an implement. So I really appreciate that answer. So now I'm excited to talk to you about your current position as Kluge Chair in the Library of Congress in DC at this time. And tell us a little bit about that position. Folks may not be familiar with it, and how has that allowed you to recalibrate, to think through some of the ideas that you say that you've been developing for 10, 15, 20 years?
Yeah, no, thanks so much. So the Kluge Center is a really wonderful creation inside the Library of Congress that was endowed by someone named John W. Kluge uh, back in, I think it was 1999, around
Hmm.
2000. So about a quarter of a century ago. And John Kluge was an industrialist who had a deep appreciation for the role of democratic institutions and enabling the best of civil society. And he gave a significant gift to create this center with the mission of putting scholarly expertise in conversation with policymaking. And so
Beautiful.
the Kluge Center's role is to invite scholars from many different areas of study to conduct research at the library, to engage members of the policymaking community with the vision for helping to activate more exchange between the expertise and the policymaking so that policymaking might be more rigorously informed
Hmm.
by the context of the different issues that legislation is concerned with. And it's literally, Library of Congress is right across the street from Congress. So they're adjacent to each other physically. The library serves members of Congress preeminently to ensure that they have access to the information that
Hmm.
they and their staff need in order to do their work. So that mission is I think is a terrific one, and my role is chair in technology and society. So there's several different kinds of visiting scholar positions here. Some of those are chairs, and they're chairs in different topics. So this is one of the chairs, and that topic is clearly one that for me I'm excited to engage with. It's been an opportunity both to make use of the library's resources, to do research, and also to meet with other people who are working on really important ideas, and also to be able to have conversations and engage with members of the policymaking community.
Right.
You have to make that happen in part. You were able to join us for an event we had a few
Oh,
weeks
thank
ago
you. Yeah.
and help make that possible. Those conversations are very important, and it's omnidirectional information. It's not just flowing from the so-called scholars to policymakers. It's understanding more about the policymaking process, and they get to explain what they're doing. So I'm here looking at some of the history of regulating what used to be emerging technologies. The internet used to be an emerging technology. Genetic engineering
Mm,
used to be this brand new thing that
right.
most people had never heard of, and nuclear energy, nuclear power used to be emerging. But we have new forms of those things now. But I'm looking at the history of regulating them and policy making around them in order to better understand how we might, as a society, better regulate and managing what today are our emerging technologies of AI, of
Hmm.
advanced genomics, precision medicine, hypersonic weapons, etc.
Yeah, well, as a fellow historian, that warms my heart to hear you talk about this as to for us to really get into the history of this technology and learn from our experience, our successes, failures, our mistakes, our accomplishments as we try to as we develop and we try to manage technologies. And yeah, the roundtable to which you invited me was this wonderful gathering of people talking about religion, democracy, and technology from all different areas, from engineering, from theology, from the congressional staffers. So yeah, I saw it in action, and it's an exciting time, and I look forward to hearing more about that. You also have a related project, I think, called the Future Humans, Human Futures, which you've been working on for a number of years, also with the support of the Luce Foundation. And I'd love for you to say a few words about that. And I'm tempted to sort of ask these unanswerable questions of you, but that's what that's what we can do among friends, right? Do you think of humanity being different in the future than it was in the past? When we think of human futures and future humans, are future humans
Mhm.
going to be different from present humans and past humans? And as a historian, right, to what degree, this is these huge questions that we love to ask ourselves and our students, right? To what degree is past prologue, right? Is the past the prologue to what we might expect? So that's what I like to, end our conversation on. So if you'd say a few words,
Yeah, no,
right? Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, that project, as you mentioned, Future Humans, Human Future, has been supported by the Henry Luce Foundation to really bring together different kinds of talent, different people from different sectors of society, within and beyond academe, private industry, people who are
Mm,
focused on human rights work, artists, creators, to examine some of these very important and frankly complicated opportunities and challenges that are going to shape the future of humanity in our world. And some of those are related to things I've mentioned already, different forms
mhm,
of AI and robotics, of agricultural technology and precision medicine, genomics, and other things. The challenges for climate, particularly, the
mhm.
impacts on the environment are
Right.
among those very, very consequential factors that we're facing. And I think the most concise answer to your question as will humans be different in the future? I think absolutely. I
Uh-huh.
think from many different ways, culturally, uh, from physical anthropology perspective of evolutionary terms, that human beings have always changed.
Okay.
That's everything from our
Something new.
diet to our
Right.
habitat.
Right.
Right. So you're asking as a past prologue? Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've seen lots of different changes before
Yeah.
with technology. The printing press, as you know, was a very
Mhm.
kind of, it was probably more controversial than the internet at
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. It
I don't,
certainly unleashed its own storm of,
yes, it
you
did.
know,
I don't know how many
yeah,
people were ever
comments.
burnt at the stake over the internet, but there were certainly a lot of people who were literally set on fire
Yeah.
because of the controversies over who should be able to print what and being able to
Hmm. Hmm.
we think about the internet as giving a megaphone to people. Anyone can have a stage now. Uh, the modern printing technology was invented, of course, centuries ago
Right.
by people in ancient China.
Right.
But the press with the movable type, that was a more recent thing that started in the 15th century, and it was also seen as giving a megaphone to everyone, because anyone who could, instead of having to be a trained scribe and knowing this art of writing, you can just want to write something and you go to a printer
Hmm.
and they would turn this stuff into books. It didn't have to be true. You could just write it. And there
Right.
was propaganda was born in print
Yeah.
form,
Yeah.
at least at a mass level. And it generated all kinds of things. So I think our technology is going to continue to changes. There are people
Mhm.
who have observed that the book, the long form, popular print at a mass level, was when it became available to the masses. That's before you typically had to live in a monastery or you had to be super
Mhm.
wealthy to have books. Suddenly they were cheap and plentifully available, and so it it changed people's attention span.
Right.
It actually made the attention span longer. You could sit with the book, and people develop this proclivity to sit with things longer. Now we're going back in the other direction.
Right.
We're sitting with things for less time, and that has its own controversies. I think in the future, because we already have the very early stage capacity to redesign, to re-engineer human beings at the cellular level. We can change our DNA. That's
Mhm.
largely for medical therapies right now.
Right.
Right? So we can now cure sickle cell. The FDA
Mhm.
just approved that December 2023. It's a cure. It's the meaning is gone. It's not a treatment. It's a cure through
Uh-huh.
genetic engineering.
Right.
That has already changed the lives of people in clinical trials, and it's beginning to change the lives of people under that newly approved, commercially available treatment.
Hmm.
And we're going to see other things that are based on changing our DNA to genetically remake us, to modify us. I think that's going to bring about incredibly positive possibilities for health and longevity.
Hmm.
And I also think that it's going to create some really difficult questions. How much should people be changed
Hmm.
genetically?
Hmm. Hmm.
Who should control the technology?
Technology and access.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, who
Hmm.
who should enjoy the profits?
Right.
Because this is not cheap. The
Hmm.
sickle cell cure is $3 million per patient. That's not a small amount of money.
No. No. No.
And then who has access to
Who
it?
is right?
And how do you decide? Yeah, insurance
Right.
companies currently are paying that $3 million, but not everyone has insurance, and you can max
Right.
out your policy right now.
Right.
So that's tight. So there are big questions like that, and then what we're already seeing with generative AI, perhaps arguably what is most uh, uh, I won't say different about generative AI, but what's most game changing is that you don't need to be a programmer to use it.
Right.
You
That's right.
just need to be able to communicate in the language that you use every day.
Hmm.
And And you can use this AI to do all kinds of things because you can
Mhm.
just talk to it or type.
Mhm.
And so the ability for people who are not coders, who are not programming experts, to be able to direct a machine
Mhm.
to do computation in an advanced way is having all kinds of exciting effects
Mhm.
and also terrifying ones.
Mhm. Right.
And
Right.
then if you kind of fast forward, where will we be in 10 years? Well, who knows? Because if you ask someone in 2021 to predict what might be happening today, they'd probably be way off, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
So will the future be different? It will. Will we need more talent that is more human-centered? And what I mean by human-centered is not anthropocentric, but
Mhm.
is more thoughtful about the
Mhm.
impact that things have on our world, as opposed to only being profit-centric, right? What will
Right.
maximize profit is one way of approaching these things. What will make our world better is another way of prioritizing something. I think we're going to need
Right.
more of the latter, more of how do we have a good impact over the short term and long term in our world, I think is the big challenge. And so that's what that project has been focused on. How do you bring people together to develop very high level strategies and networks of possible collaboration to get ready for the things that are unfolding?
Mhm. Yeah. Well, you've given us a lot to think about, and I can see how it ties back to issues of leadership. I can also see how, as you referred to with the printing press, how we can learn from the past when they have encountered these same moments. And I
Mhm.
just read with my students the section of the Apology when Socrates tells the Athenians, don't be so interested in money, be interested in the good life, right? That's what's important. That's the highest value.
Mhm.
And so taking it into the humanities realm, which you did at the end so beautifully, is to think, okay, what are our priorities as
Mhm.
human beings? And we've both been scholars of religion, you more than I, but we also know of our proclivities to sinfulness and self-centeredness, as well as to altruism and generosity, right? And so how we
Mhm.
negotiate that and come to terms with it first, recognize it, and then, choose the side of the better angels. Um, this has been wonderful, Sylvester. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really
Oh
appreciate
yeah.
it.
No,
It's so
thanks for
very
inviting me
helpful.
on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, great. I hope you have a good rest of the day, and we'll see each other soon. Take care.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate
Yeah.
you.
Bye-bye.